Warning, this video is intended for adult collectors. It contains plastic collectibles, questionable opinions, and a guy that loves his Japanese noisemakers. Incoming random review in 3, 2, 1.
Ah, man, how long has it been? How long has it been since we actually did a DX Kamen Rider belt review here on this channel? It's been way too long, but it's also been a long time since we had a Rider belt that I enjoy this much. And yeah, I actually had early enough from release to actually review it when it's still topical. Let's talk about the DX Desire Driver from Kamen Rider Geats. This thing has come with a lot of hype because of the functionality, because of the uniqueness, and just because, well, it just looks like a whole lot of fun. But there's a few things to know before you purchase, and we'll get into those. First off, I'll apologize because this is an old school review. The audio for me is not great because I'm focused on the belt, and you don't see me on a face cam because the lighting for this situation makes me look like a ghoul, and it's not close enough to Halloween for that. So we're going to go as old school traditional as possible and just let you look at the belt the whole time. As you can see, in its generic state, it is just that. It is just a very simple piece of black with a lot of tech detail and sculpting going in just to make it look as mechanical as possible whilst not really having any form or definition. You got the diagonal stripe where the speakers are located, and then the center ring, which we're going to see a lot of light effects from very, very soon. The core here in the middle is, of course, for an ID core. Now, before I was going to show off the side and the belt itself, but the belt design itself is pretty standard and generic. There's nothing that really stands out about it, nothing that really plays into the design. It's just a belt strap. So is the buckle on the back, by the way, and it seems like it's the same design I've seen them use before, which is pretty typical. Oh, and if you've been on my channel for a long time and you're wondering, the ride bucket's not here because the ride bucket had an unfortunate accident with some broken resin bottles and is unfortunately out of commission. So until I can find a substitute, this belt is being modeled by the Imagine X Megazord, which is the closest thing I could find to a big plastic thing that can hold a belt up. So, yeah. Let's actually talk function. So the look in this form is just nothing, all right? So it's whatever. So there's not a whole lot to talk about here. You're going to find the on button here on the underside of the black side, and on the underside of the silver section in the back, you're going to find the trigger that lets you reverse the whole thing around. You can see from the inside, it's entirely identical on both sides. There's nothing really showing you that, this is supposed to be the left side, this is supposed to be the right side, except for the fact that the on switch is always on the bottom of a belt. So, it doesn't really matter. You can't really tell the two sides apart at the end of the day. All right, so let's actually get into some actual function because there is a lot of function to talk about. First off, let's go with that on switch we just mentioned. So starting off, pretty basic so far. Now, before we get into it, let's just try out a few things before we go into full function, just to cover everything. For starters, if I try spinning the belt now, I just get one little generic sound. Just to let you know that you're doing something, but it's not the right thing. And that goes for the buckles too. So let's go ahead and switch a few on. No henshin noise, just the basic sound effects. Which, if you want to just hear those unabated, is actually not a bad way to do it. So if I put on Magnum and Boost, for instance, so it's going to let you try, but it's not going to get anywhere. Definitely something wrong here. So the main sound effects obviously do not activate unless you actually have an ID core attached. The ID core, by the way, is only going to work when the belt halves are taken off. If there are buckles installed, you can't fit it. By the way, I am so looking forward to the day someone can 3D print these and just make me like a million. Because like I would love to put a TJOmega stamp on one of these, even if it doesn't light up, you know? That day is probably not too far off, to be honest. But let's go ahead and start getting some real functionality in here. So the core does light up when installed. You do get the entry noise, which is cool. We're going to start small before we get into like the full proper henshin, just so we can kind of escalate and bring us up to the final show. So let's try a basic henshin with hammer. Henshin. Alright, so about as basic as you can get. We've seen this henshin a lot in the show, as many of the generic riders don't really have like full-sized, armored up buckles yet. So it makes for just, a nice, simple, quick little henshin. It's worth noting that the only thing the buckle's doing to go out of its way for this particular buckle is changing its light color to a pink or kind of like a lavender purple, about as close as it can get. Beyond that, it's just a basic hammer strike sound and a lot of the noises you're going to associate with the smaller buckles over time. So for now, we're going to leave that to the side. We'll bring it back toward the end, but for now, I think we need to get into the real deal. These things are awesome, by the way. Like, they feel very solid. Like, at least the main handle part is. You can see where there's a lot of, like, hollowness to it. But I don't really see that really as a bad thing, because with all that this belt is doing, it can't be so heavy that it's going to either hang off your waist or risk breaking anything in here because it's just too cumbersome. Good to keep it light in this case. And yeah, it still looks quite nice, and it's going to function really well. So that spins okay. Once it's actually on the belt and hitting the button, it's going to spin worse. And there's going to be a few things about this. We'll get into that toward the end. But for now, let's just enjoy the noise. I love that pattern. Now, what you saw me do was hit the trigger twice. What's going on here is that there's one button behind the buckle that activates. Now, I could spin the tumbler to activate it, or I could hit the trigger to activate it, but with Magnum, there are two noises associated with the henshin. If I were to spin the chamber, it would hit the button rapidly, and I wouldn't hear the first noise. So in order to hear it properly, I have to hit the trigger twice and time it out. It's a little bit weird how that works, so you can't really do it the way they do in the show, unless you want to just bypass the first sound effect. Entirely your choice. But from here, it works pretty much as you would expect. Let me go ahead and revolve it. So it's going to do that pretty much no matter what buckle are attached to it at the time. So it's basically a way of switching which hand is playing with which buckle without having to undo the entire belt. Functionally, it doesn't really change anything that's going on. It doesn't change which buckle is being named first or which one has priority in combo attacks, etc. It just is kind of a way of just switching the belt around and doing something else. So let's get it back to the standard. And let's go ahead and trigger a final attack. So that rainbow flashing effect for the final attack is pretty traditional for a rider belt. And again, sounds really good. You can hear the chamber spin. You can hear the trigger being fired. And yeah, it's a pretty cool effect. But again, it's not the full effect we're looking for. So before we get too far, we'll do boost by itself as well, just to kind of show everything in its purest form. Now, boost works the same way. There's two sound effects associated with twisting the handle, but because you can't twist the handle too fast, you're going to hear the sound effects pretty much no matter what. And Shin. So you got two completely different musical tones going through for both belts. So technically, yeah, you've got two full henshins here if you use these independently, which is a pretty cool thing. Yeah, and it's just a cool effect with this, like, busting open when you rev it. Now, as you can see, I'm timing it just right. So I'm trying to get as much of each sound effect out as possible, because if a sound effect finishes playing, it'll go into the henshin announcement. And if I try twisting the handle again after that, it's going to skip the henshin noise and go straight into the final attack, which means I'm going to lose the sound effect I was trying for. So there's a little bit of a timing element to it to actually get the henshin to sound right. And it just takes a little bit of practice. Otherwise, yeah, fine. So if I rev it again. So we can already tell that boost works differently from Magnum. It's not a simple activate it once and hear the noise. It actually has this secondary startup to it. And you can tell, like, I can rev it as many times as I want, and it's not going to play the finisher until I'm done. So technically, I can make this finisher last like 5 minutes if I really wanted to rev the engine for that long, and potentially break the handle. But, small sacrifices for a cool finisher. So that works too. So let's see what happens if we actually add in hammer and try and get a second sound out of it. Now I could activate it by hitting one, but we're going to hit both. Here you can tell a little bit about how the belt functions. You can hear Boost's independent henshin play completely, and then it switched over to the one we heard for Armed Hammer. So that is how most of the buckles seem to work, at least the ones that are released so far, where they kind of take turns doing their thing rather than being mixed in any way or activating any kind of combined noise. So let me go ahead and revolve it. Just to show that it kind of is doing the same thing. Now, boost, being a special buckle, is going to take priority when I start playing these things together. So if I want to actually play the finisher, you will notice that it doesn't play like the boost time like it does when it's on its own. It only does that on its own or when it's attached to a larger buckle like Magnum. So You're not, so it's trying to keep a few things special for special situations. Kind of, boost makes things act weird, basically. So let me go ahead and go back. And just to demonstrate what I mean with, like, it doesn't matter what side everything is on, we'll go ahead and do the henshin or the finish one more time. So yeah, it doesn't matter what side it's on, doesn't matter if it's upside down or not. It's going to have different priorities for different buckles. I've got water, for instance, and water always goes before hammer, no matter which one goes on first, no matter which side they are put on. It's just a weird thing where somewhere in the programming, it knows which ones are supposed to go first. There is a priority list, which means it's not going to quite have as much functionality sound-wise as I thought. In the playability, absolutely. I will point out at this point, I love how all three of these buckles have very different play patterns to them, and I can tell already that my favorite combinations aren't going to be based so much on sound effects and lights as it is going to be on how fun it is to actually function the belt. Kind of similar to Forze in that everything triggers a little bit differently. Speaking of triggering, I think we've put this off long enough. Let's go ahead and do this properly. Henshin! There's a few things going on here you need to be aware of. Number one, the get ready for part and the combined sound effects of their transformations only happens with Magnum and Boost. I have Zombie. I tried it with Zombie. It doesn't do that. So no matter which buckles you're using, there's always going to be a priority on Geats himself. Ultimately, this is his belt, and they want you to know it. So that aside, isn't this a freaking cool henshin? I love the look of it. I love the two handles going off the side. I love the overall look, the gold rim. There's so much about the overall look of this I absolutely love. And did you see the light trick that it did? The different images between like the gun effects and the speed meters that are going, the speedometers that are going inside it. There is a super cool effect going on here, and I'm gonna do the henshin again just so I can show it to you. So if you look on the inside, you're going to see green and red lines painted in. And the way this works is when the light inside changes to red, those red lines vanish, and then the red mixes with the green to create black, meaning it's going to show up as like a bright red design with the green acting as the black lines through the effect. And then when it switches to green, the opposite happens, switching over to the other color that you see in the pattern. It's an incredibly clever color and light trick. Here, now that you know what's going on, let's do this one more time. If I can, there we go. Like I said, super cool, super clever trick. Love it. So, like I said, we've already done the revolve in all of the others. It doesn't matter if I try to revolve it now or not. You're going to get the exact same effects in the exact same order. So we can just go ahead and, demonstrate the last of the sound effects we can pull out of this. Nice basic explosion, but we don't want basic explosion. We want the big one.
Magnum, boost, victory.
Or you can give me the exact same one. Thank you very much.
Boost time.
Gotta make sure you rev it up or it's not gonna have enough energy for the big finisher.
Magnum, boost, grand victory.
So the toy does reward interacting with it as much as possible, which is a good little incentive to see all the things that it can do and all the sound effects you're going to get. So yeah, absolutely great toy for playing. And again, this is one of those toys where the more you buy, the more playability it's going to add to everything in the collection. Because different buckles are going to look or play better with others, than some combos. And the more you buy, the more combinations you have available to you. This is a very dangerous rabbit hole to fall down as far as Kamen Rider toys goes. Like, gimmick collectibles are already bad enough, but this changes a lot with every single buckle. All right. I'm disqualified from being a Kamen Rider now. So that, my friends, is everything you get in your basic DX Desire driver. It's a fantastic toy. Now, like I said, there's a few things to it. So I turn it off so I can put it back together silently. There's a few things to it that I didn't expect that do limit a little bit of the functionality I assumed it would have. But overall, it still does so much. And there's so many different ways of playing. I feel like this is a cool combination of all kinds of different tricks they've learned with Rider belts over the years. You've got all the different ways of triggering that the Forze switches did. You've got all the different light color tricks in this belt. You've got the rail ID system from like full bottles going into the back. And then you even have the rotation from ZO. Everything in this belt reminds me of something else that a previous belt did uniquely, all thrown together. Almost like this would have made for like a great anniversary belt, doing a little bit of everything and still having its own unique function and style. So, as I said, there's some quirks to how it works. Priorities, the lack of like being able to swap the left and right and which noises come first. But beyond that, what it's doing is really cool. The play pattern is really cool. And it's something where I'm looking forward to, how like power-ups are going to work in this. I'm waiting for the inevitable buckle that goes on both sides to make like one complete solid look. The inevitable upgrades to Magnum and Boost. These are really cool avenues to go down that I'm really looking forward to. So that, my friends, is the DX Desire driver. Desire is a great word for it because it's a very desirable belt. Does a lot, has a lot of play function to it. And remember, this is just the standard set. There's also the set that comes with Zombie and the buckle holders that lets you do even more. So, yeah, I'm in love with this. Absolutely in love. If you're on the fence, go for it. Like, it's gonna be a dangerous one to drop down, but man, these things are fun. Guys, I am facing the most powerful enemy any YouTuber can face, the algorithm, and I need your help to defeat him. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and leave a comment. Every time you do, we attack that algorithm and we drive it back until it can no longer defeat this channel. Thank you very much.